All right, so let's get started. As usual, we're going to need to save our scene first before we do anything else. I'm just going to make a new folder here, call it Rigids 4. And it's not just about saving the scene, because of course you have to save the scene, but we also want to set up our structure. So I'm going to say it's Rigids 4/scene, and that's where I'll actually put the hip file, rigids4.0.hip. And now that we've done that, we can do this aliases and variables business here. We're going to use this job variable a lot to actually refer to the base of the project. So I like to do like this. So that way later we can do job/geo for geometry caching, or job/sim for sim caching, and so on and so forth. So I got that out of the way. Let's make this thing here, we'll call it fracture, and we're gonna set up the whole terrain business inside of here. What's our terrain gonna look like on top? Well, first and foremost, this is gonna be a grid. That's for sure. We're gonna want it to be very big. We have units here on the grid, and they basically represent how many meters we are using here in world space. So considering we want to make a huge piece of ground, I'm going to say, let's make it like 100 meters wide. Something like that. Or maybe even, well, let's make it even wider than this along this direction, because when we render this, it's going to be a rectangular shape. So I'm going to say 125, something like that. Let's control click the camera, so that we have a camera relative to our view. We're going to want to zoom in on it a little bit to kind of capture that. Something like that. We could probably afford to go a little bit wider, actually. Go back in here, make it like, none of this has to be exact. It's just whatever will look good to you. And now that we've done that, we're going to want to have actually all the subdivisions on here, so that when we displace it to make kind of a mountainous terrain, that'll look cool too. So I'm going to say copy the X size here, and that's going to be the columns, like that. And copy this side here, put it in rows. So now we have a nice square thing. So, if you wanted to make changes later, the resolution will still more or less look the same as we change the size. In fact, I'm going to say let's actually get twice as much resolution so we can capture finer details. And those details are going to come from a bunch of things. First off, we can use the standard mountain. We're going to want the element size to be much bigger than this, so something like that maybe, and we can't really see it, so we'll have to pump this up. There we go. So here we go. I'm going to turn off the grid. I'm also going to turn off, by holding this, the specular. I don't want it to look shiny. But now we have an actual kind of mountain-looking terrain. So it looks good so far. There's lots of ways we can do this. I'm going to do two different ways just to demonstrate it. We have our point VOP, which has classic stuff inside of it, like our turbulence, various turbulence noises that we can use to offset, the Y component of the position. Of course, if we take the incoming position and pipe it straight to the outgoing position, it's running over every point, so nothing changes. But we could sample this noise based on the position, and it can come up with something. So I'm gonna stick with the default alligator noise, which looks kind of cool. And I could say vector to float. We want to crack open the position to get the Y, because it's really only the Y we want to change. And we already know that we're going to have to pass a full vector into the ending position here. So once again, if I just do this, it'll look the same. The position gets turned into the XYZ. The XYZ sets the XYZ here, becomes the position, everything's the same. In reality, we don't really want to just do that, obviously. We want to change the Y, the part going up and down here. So we'll take the Y as it was, add this noisy thing to it, and then make that the Y. So you can see, we just added some detail to it. Now this frequency is way too high. Let's lower it quite a bit. And maybe even to help us see it, let's up this amplitude to 2. So the lower I make this number, the less frequent it is. And it's obviously too low at 0. So how about something like that? So if we want to see it before and after, we just added some kind of large regions of extra noise to this. So that's cool. We can also go ahead and say, let's see those extra bits of noise that we're adding demonstrated or shown via color. So I'm gonna make a ramp here. We'll take just the noise that we're adding. We'll fill it in. We'll put it through here. This is like one of these color ramp things. And we'll say, show us that here. And this is what I like a lot about alligator noise. It kind of has a little mountainy look with these little cracks and valleys in between like that, which is pretty cool. And if we want to change the actual colors associated with the ramp here, I could say something like, maybe in the valleys, we'll start with like a brown. It'll be like a darker brown, and maybe in the heights here, it'll be a lighter. Well, we could probably just do that same brown and just do lighter, a little more yellow, something like that. And I'm also gonna go to set this to smooth shaded so we don't want to see all those lines. So now some of these little peaks that we added, it kind of makes sense that they'd be a little lighter colored. And we're gonna use this color later in our rendering stuff. So there's all kinds of things you can do. You can combine different frequencies of noise. So like I'm just gonna make another noise here, and maybe I'll use simplex instead. Simplex goes above 0 and below 0 in terms of the values that it returns. So I could say, how about we multiply these two together? Let's say not just the alligator noise, and we'll do this. Say let's take the alligator noise that we have here and multiply it times this noise here. So what is this noise going to do? Well, once again, it's too high, a little too high anyway. Actually, it is the 0.05. Let's do it something more like maybe 0.01. Maybe we want to make the amplitude on this much higher so we can really see its effect. So you can see the higher it goes, we're making these big regions. So here's like a really mountainous region onto the side here. So that's kind of cool. It probably don't need to be that high though. We can offset it if we want to, where we can just take we can just move the noise around essentially. So something like that, and this is tied to the frequency as well. So something like that looks fine to me. We can change the turbulence in terms of how big if there's progressively smaller and smaller features that are being added. Anyway, you could do this to death, but I'm just gonna leave it like this for now. This looks pretty much fine to me. This won't greatly affect the sim. Of course, the pieces that we fracture out of this will be dependent on this height, but not a huge deal if yours doesn't look exactly like mine. Cool.